All right, everybody, welcome to our continuation video on the present tense. So in this video, the plan is we're going to go through 20 phrases in English using the present simple tense. Now, while we're going through these, same thing as all my other videos, I'm going to read it, we're going to pause, you're going to try and write it out and translate it, and then we'll review together how it looks. We're going to be keeping in mind not just the present simple, but also our irregular verbs and how they look while they're translating. Now, before we get into this, one really important thing to note. We are right now operating as if we're building a building, right? And we're working just on the foundation here. So it may seem like a lot of these phrases are oversimplified or maybe stuff that you wouldn't even use in your day-to-day life. We need to build this foundation before we can throw the roof on and say that we are bilingual. So it's just the first couple steps we're in right now. This is where it all begins. No worries if you're feeling a little frustrated. This is tough for new learners, but if we just put our heads down and get through it, by the end, you'll have a roof and be bilingual. All right, so here we have it, our present tense worksheet. Same format as always. I'm going to read the phrase in English, pause, take a second, translate it, and get it rolling. So, first one, I walk in the street. All right, so the verb is to walk, which is caminar. To translate that to the yo form, we go camino en la calle. Second one, she eats pizza every day. To eat is the verb here, so that's comer. But we have to conjugate it obviously to person, so ella come pizza cada dia. And dia should have a tilde. Whoop. Sick. Cool. Number 3. You write letters for your father. Okay, to write is the verb here, which is escribir. What we're going to do, though, is conjugate it to you. So we put escribes cartas para tu padre. Good. Number 4, we have the keys. All right, so there's a little bit of trickery here because the verb is tener. Like I said, tener is irregular. It's one of those go verbs in the present first person. So the yo would be tango, and the other ones are e to ie changes. So tienes, tiene. The only one that doesn't change is what we have here, which is we. So that's tenemos las llaves. All right, so a little bit of trickery I threw at you there. Number 5, he knows my mother. Okay, so for this one, it is el conocer. Conocer is to know, the verb to know, when we're talking about like personals, people. So I know, it's more personal instead of like I know facts, which would be saber. So el conoce a mi madre. And this L should have a tilde, and it's gonna, boom. Oh, Google's on it today, ladies and gentlemen. Cool. So, él conoce a mi madre. He knows my mother. Next, they can dance all night. All right, so this one, a little bit tough because it's two verbs next to each other. It's one in the present simple. Another one is technically in the infinitive, but we'll talk about that in a second. So, they can translate to poder. All right, but remember, poder is one of those O to UE verbs. And since it's a group of men, we're going to put ellos, and then we have the O to UE, pueden. And now to dance is the next word. That one you don't conjugate. You never conjugate the second verb if there's two next to each other, just like in English we don't. So they can dance all night, toda la noche. All right, something important too here. So todo is an adjective. If this was a noun, la noche, that was masculine and was el something, it would be todo la noche. But since la noche is technically feminine, it's toda la noche. All right, so ellos pueden bailar toda la noche. Next, they go to the club. And we're talking about a group of women here. Go to a club. All right, so the verb is ir. Ir is to go. What we're going to do is put ellas in front of that. Now, to go is one of those weird verbs that just conjugates completely differently. So ellas van is how it translates. A la discoteca. All right, ellas van a la discoteca. 8, you say all the right things. Okay, we have another kind of weird one here. The verb to say is decir. All right, but it's one of those E to I verbs. So we have tú dices todas las cosas correctas. All right, and keep in mind this too, yep, should have a tilde, perfect. So keep in mind, we've said this before, I just want to reiterate it again. As you start to pay more attention to Spanish TV, to Spanish movies, to Spanish-speaking people, Spanish music, whatever it is, you'll realize for a verb like to or yo, you really don't need to put this to in front because dices automatically implies that I'm talking about you. Or if I say digo, that would be the yo form. I don't have to say yo digo. It's repetitive. It's unnecessary. But I totally understand while we're in the beginning stages, while we're trying to build that home, having two dices makes translating word for word a little bit easier. So we can include it. It's totally fine. It doesn't change the meaning at all. People will still understand what you're saying. It just sounds a little repetitive. So something to keep in mind as you progress through this journey. Okay, number 9. I know how to speak Spanish. Okay, so here we had to know up top. Right? He knows my mother, we said for number 5, and that was conocer. Now we have know as a fact. I know how to speak Spanish. Fact. So for this one, it's saber. Now saber, one of those irregulars in the yo. It is say como hablar en español. And these two, say should have a tilde above it, which I guess Google is not going to help me out with this time. Español also, this N is the Ñ. So it has the squiggly line up top. I guess Google is on a bathroom break or something and decided to not help me out with this tilde in Ñ. But that's fine. Say como hablar en español. All right, and we have here the infinitive. To speak is the infinitive in English. Hablar is the infinitive in Spanish. All right, next. I give all my money to my grandson. All right, so to give, the verb is dar. We have to conjugate it, obviously. And again, it's one of those where it conjugates weird. It's an irregular. So I give translates to doy. And then we have todo mi dinero a mi nieto. All right, so doy todo mi dinero a mi nieto is I give my money to my grandson. Number 11, numero 11. He arrives late to the game. All right, so for this one, we're going to put the verb is llegar. And then in order to translate it, we have to put el in front for this one. El llega tarde al partido. So this is kind of a cool example too, because we know that the translates to el or la, right? So if I'm being technically correct, I should have el partido, but that sounds really ugly. Sounds really ugly in Spanish. So what they do is they cut that E out and they just put al. All right, so el, and then this L also should have a tilde. So this one should have a tilde because that tilde demonstrates that it's about a person and we're not using L as the. All right, so L is being used as a person. He instead of the book, for example, el libro. So L with a tilde, llega tarde al partido. This one is not irregular. It follows the rules, the regular present simple rules. Okay, next. We believe that you have the book. Okay. So for this one, the verb is creer. And since it's in the nosotros, we really don't need to put nosotros creemos. So we're going to put creemos que. And now we have, you have. So we used have earlier. Have was number, where'd it go? We have the keys, tenemos. So tenemos was not irregular. That just followed the normal rules. But now we have you have. This follows the irregular rules of tener. So it goes E to IE. So creemos que tienes el libro. All right, so again, this verb is tener, but it translates irregularly. It conjugates irregularly. So instead of tenés, it's tienes el libro. I have heard in Argentina they say tenés. Once you start really getting into Spanish, it just sounds weird, tenés. So tienes el libro. You have the book. Good. All right. Number 13. You think about science a lot. All right, so the verb here is pensar. Now, pensar is one of those E to IE verbs. So it's irregular, so we're going to put piensas and piensas mucho en la ciencia. And then, whoops, well, that's not spelled right. There you go. Mucho en la ciencia. I'm just, sorry, guys. A little bit off on that one. So, the verb pensar becomes piensas because it's irregular, E to IE, mucho en la ciencia. Next, she enters through the door. Okay, so the verb enter is entrar. So we're going to put ella, and then this one is not irregular, so it's just entra por la puerta. Por, para, there's going to be a video explaining the difference between those two. So don't overly stress if you got that part wrong, because that is kind of a complicated thing to dive into, which we don't clearly have enough time for today. But the verb, ella, entra, follows normal rules, so you're good to go there if you conjugated that correctly. Next, we produce videos every day. Okay, for this one, the verb is producir. All right, and it's in the nosotros, so we just do producimos videos cada día. Next up, we have a group of men who receive food from my grandma. So the verb is recibir. It's a group of men, so it's going to be ellos reciben. There's nothing irregular there. Comida de mi abuela. Why is there a C there? Ellos reciben comida de mi abuela. Like I said, nothing irregular. You're kind of just following the rules that we've already laid out. Next, they try to swim at night. All right, so now we have a group of women and men. Take a second, see if you can figure out why it's important to include those two groups. All right, so unfortunately for the ladies, when it is a group of both women and men, the men take over grammatically. So instead of ellos y ellas, it's just going to be ellos, and then the verb is intentar. All right, so intentar is the verb, nothing irregular about it. So ellos intentan to swim. The verb is nadar, and then at night would be en la noche. All right, so ellos intentan nadar en la noche. 18. I impose my beliefs on my family. All right, so this was kind of a tougher one. Not exactly a overly common verb, but I wanted to include it to demonstrate something important. So the verb is imponer. Imponer. Imponer, we have the word poner that finishes the verb. So we have to conjugate this as if it was just poner, but put im in front of it. All right, so poner is one of those go verbs. So I'm going to put impongo mis creencias a mi familia. So imponer in the yo becomes impongo, and then the rest it just follows like poner. Mis creencias, it's more than one belief. So for that reason, it's not mi creencias, it's mis creencias a mi familia. All right, number 19. She watches TV. All right, this verb is mirar. In the infinitive, we have to conjugate it. So we're going to put ella mira la televisión. Televisión, the O should have a okay, now it wants to wake up. I guess back from the bathroom break. Good job, Google. So it has the tilde over the O to spell it correctly. Ella mira la televisión. Mira follows the regular present simple rules. And then the last one. We return to the start. Return is going to be volver. So remember, this is an O to UE, but it is in the we form. So it's in the we form. It does not change. So it's just volvemos. And then to the start, you can say al principio. And there you have it. All right, so I'm going to go back up slowly. Just make sure you got every one. So this was the present tense worksheet. As always, the next recommendation for anyone listening is to write out another 15, 20 phrases in the present simple tense in English using words that you know in Spanish, and then try and translate those. Repetition, repetition, repetition is the best way to really nail down the present tense in Spanish, especially with those irregular verbs. The more you use them, the more comfortable you feel translating them, and then it just kind of becomes part of your everyday vernacular. Thanks for coming out. Hopefully we will see you again.